I don't remember falling. I don't remember letting go of her hand. One second I was running, the next, the world tilted and everything went black.
Sarah, I don't even have the words. Some stories don't just change you, they destroy everything you've ever known. They burn through your past, your memories, your sense of safety, until all that's left is smoke and silence. And when the flames die out, you're left standing in the wreckage, alone, lost, wondering if there's anything left to save. But some people find a way to rise again. Tonight's guest didn't just survive. She walked through fire and came out the other side, unrecognizable. This is Mia's Whisper, and tonight, we listen to Sarah. Good evening, Sarah. You're on Mia's Whisper.
Hi, Mia. I don't even know where to begin.
Take your time. You're in a safe space.
It was a Tuesday night. I remember because I had just made my daughter's favorite dinner, spaghetti and meatballs. She was 8, full of life, full of energy. My husband was in the garage working on his old motorcycle. That was our routine. I cooked. He worked on that bike. Our daughter ran back and forth between us, always asking questions, always laughing. It was normal, a completely normal night. But that's the thing, Mia. Disasters don't come with warnings. I had no idea that was the last time I'd ever hear her laugh. The last time I'd see my husband bent over that stupid motorcycle wiping grease off his hands. The last time I'd sit at that dinner table watching my little girl swirl her fork in spaghetti sauce. It started with the smoke alarm, a high-pitched scream that cut through the silence of our home. I thought maybe I had burned the garlic bread. I wasn't scared, not yet, just annoyed. I walked toward the kitchen like it was nothing. And then I smelled it. Not the comforting scent of roasted tomatoes and basil. Not the warmth of fresh bread. This was different, sharp, chemical, like something was burning that wasn't supposed to. My stomach twisted. I turned the corner and, Mia, the flames were already there. They weren't small. They weren't just flickering at the stove. They were crawling up the walls, licking the ceiling. The heat hit me so fast I stumbled back. It was alive, moving, growing, eating everything in sight. And then, the panic set in.
Did you have time to react?
I tried. I swear I tried. I ran for my daughter. She was behind me, frozen, staring at the fire with wide eyes. I grabbed her hand, and we ran toward the front door. But the smoke, God, the smoke, it was everywhere. It was like trying to run underwater. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. My throat felt like it was closing. Every step felt slower, heavier. I screamed for my husband, but I couldn't hear his voice. Just the fire, just the roar of it swallowing our home. My daughter squeezed my hand so tight, like she knew, like she was trying to hold on to me, because she knew what I couldn't admit in that moment.
And then?
I don't remember falling. I don't remember letting go of her hand. One second I was running. The next, the world tilted and everything went black.
When did you wake up?
3 days later, in the hospital, a nurse was standing over me checking my IV. Her voice was soft, like she didn't want to wake me. But I was already awake. I was already there. And the first thing I asked was, "Where's my family?" I didn't ask if they were okay. I didn't ask if I had been in an accident. I just asked where they were, because deep down, Mia, I already knew. The nurse hesitated. That little pause before she spoke. That's all it took. That tiny split-second hesitation before she whispered, "I'm so sorry." My husband, my daughter, they were gone. I don't know how long I laid there after that. Maybe hours, maybe days. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore. I had survived, Mia, but I didn't feel like I had. The doctors said I had third-degree burns on my arms, but I didn't care. They said I was lucky, but I didn't feel lucky. They kept asking me if I wanted to see a counselor, but I didn't speak. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. I didn't have the words. I didn't have anything left in me. I was just empty. I remember the funeral, but not really. I was there, but I wasn't. People spoke to me, hugged me, told me they were sorry. But all I could think about was that night, about the last time I saw them, about the way my husband's hands were covered in oil from that bike, the way my daughter kept giggling over dinner. It was all so normal. And then, gone. It didn't feel real. It still doesn't. I kept waiting to wake up, waiting for someone to tell me it was all a mistake. But the world kept moving, and I was stuck in the moment that destroyed everything. I couldn't accept it. I didn't want to. My brain kept replaying that night over and over, searching for the moment where I could have done something differently. Could I have run faster? Could I have found another way out? Did I check the stove? Did I forget something? Was this my fault?
Sarah, I need you to hear this. That fire wasn't your fault.
I don't know how to believe that, Mia.
Because guilt is the cruelest kind of grief. But it's lying to you, Sarah. You did everything you could.
Then why am I still here? Why did I wake up in that hospital when they didn't?
Sarah, I don't even have the words.
Neither did I, Mia. For a long time, I didn't have words for any of it. I didn't speak for weeks after the funeral. What was there to say? My world had ended, but I was still in it.
Surviving doesn't always feel like living, does it? It's not just the loss, it's the after, the quiet, the days that stretch on, demanding you keep going when all you want to do is stop. Sarah, what did those days look like for you? After the fire, after the funeral, how did you exist in the aftermath?
For months, I didn't know how to live. I didn't want to live. My world ended that night, and I had to keep existing in the ruins of it. The hardest part wasn't just losing them, it was surviving. It was waking up every morning and remembering what I had lost. The first few weeks, I didn't even speak. Not because I didn't want to, Kim, but because I couldn't. I didn't have the words. I didn't have anything left in me. I was just empty. I moved in with my sister. She took care of me, but I wasn't really there. I'd sit on her couch, staring at the wall, trapped in my own head. Everything reminded me of them. The smell of spaghetti, the sound of a motorcycle engine on the street, the little shoes by the front door that weren't my daughter's. I was drowning, and I had no idea how to come up for air.
And no one knew how to help?
They tried. My sister tried. But how do you fix something that's completely shattered? How do you bring back what's gone? And then one day, my sister handed me a journal.
A journal?
Yeah, she sat next to me, held my hand, and said, "Write it down. Everything, the pain, the anger, the guilt. Just get it out." I thought it was stupid at first. I didn't want to write. I didn't want to do anything. But that night, I picked up the pen, and for the first time since the fire, I let myself speak, not out loud, just on paper.
Writing became your escape?
It became my voice, Mia. At first, it was just messy scribbles, incoherent thoughts. But slowly, the words started making sense. And once they did, I couldn't stop. I wrote down everything. The fire, the hospital, the funeral, the guilt, the grief. And one day, I wrote something I never thought I'd write.
What was it?
I want to live.
You found something to hold on to.
Yes, and that was the beginning. The first step toward learning how to survive after everything. At first, it didn't change everything. I still felt broken. I still woke up to an empty world. But writing gave me something to hold on to, a way to release everything I had been carrying inside me. And little by little, it helped me keep going. I started small. I went outside more. I helped my sister in the kitchen. I picked up a book. And then one day I signed up for a grief support group.
That's a big step.
It was, and I almost didn't go. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I finally walked in. But when I did, I met people who understood. People who had lost, just like me. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone.
Talking about it with others helped?
Yeah, it made me realize that grief isn't something you get over. It's something you learn to carry. And it's heavy. But when you share it, it becomes just a little bit lighter.
Did writing help you forgive yourself?
I don't know if I'll ever completely forgive myself, Mia, but it helped me see that I wasn't to blame. That my love for them wasn't measured by what happened that night. And that maybe, just maybe, I was still here for a reason. My sister told me once that grief is like an ocean. Sometimes it's calm, sometimes it's violent, and sometimes you feel like you're drowning. But eventually you learn to swim. Writing became my way of staying afloat, and then slowly, I started wanting more than just survival.
Sarah, I don't think I've ever heard anything like this before.
Neither had I, Mia, until I lived it. 1 year after the fire, I finally went back. For months, I refused. I couldn't bring myself to face it. The idea of standing where my home used to be felt impossible. I didn't want to see the emptiness, the destruction, the proof that everything I loved was gone. I told myself I wasn't ready, that I might never be ready. The thought of it alone would send me spiraling, imagining the ashes, the blackened ground, the pieces of my past burned beyond recognition. I wasn't sure I could survive seeing it. What if it broke me all over again? But on the 1 year anniversary, something changed. I woke up, and instead of fighting the memories, I let them come. I saw my daughter's face, heard my husband's voice, and for the first time, I didn't push them away. I let them stay. The grief didn't crush me. It didn't drown me like it had before. It was still there, heavy, aching, but it wasn't suffocating. And in that moment, I knew I had to go back, not just to say goodbye, but to face the part of me that had been trapped there all this time.
That must have taken so much strength.
I don't know if it was strength or just exhaustion. I was tired of running from it, tired of avoiding the thing that already lived inside my head every day. The drive felt familiar and foreign at the same time. The streets, the turns, the houses, it was all exactly the same. Life had moved on, even when I hadn't. Kids played outside. Someone was mowing their lawn. A woman was unloading groceries from her car. It was as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. And then I pulled up to where my home used to be. There was nothing, just an empty lot stripped bare, the remains of my life reduced to dirt and ashes. The wind moved through the open space, whispering through what was left of my past. I stood there, not knowing what I expected to feel. Pain? Closure? Maybe both? I walked where my front door used to be. I tried to picture the living room, the kitchen, the hallway where my daughter used to run. I tried to hear their laughter, to imagine my husband's voice calling my name. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see it. The fire had erased everything. Only the memories in my head kept it alive.
Did it feel real in that moment?
More real than anything had in a long time. I felt it settle in my chest. The finality of it. The weight of a year's worth of grief pressing down on me all at once. This was it. This was what was left. Just nothing. But then I saw them.
Saw what?
Tiny green shoots, sprouting through the scorched ground. They were small, fragile, barely more than weeds. But there they were, pushing through the ashes. I stared at them, unable to move. It was the first sign of life I had seen in a place that was supposed to be dead. For a long time I just stood there, watching them. The fire had taken everything, but it hadn't taken everything. The ground still remembered how to grow. The earth still knew how to heal. And maybe, just maybe, so did I.
Life doesn't stop.
Exactly. That's what hit me standing there, looking at those tiny green stems. The fire had destroyed my home, but it hadn't destroyed the ground beneath it. It had burned the surface, but not the foundation. The earth had taken its time, but it was recovering. It was healing. And for the first time I thought, what if this isn't the end? What if this isn't where my story stops? What if I can grow again too? I dropped to my knees, running my fingers over the dirt. It was still blackened, still scarred. But beneath the surface, there was life. There was hope. And in that moment, I decided this wasn't going to be the thing that broke me forever. I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and made a promise. Right there, in the ruins of my old life, I swore to myself I would find a way to live again.
And how did you do that? How did you take that first step?
It wasn't immediate. It wasn't like I suddenly had all the answers. But that moment, seeing those green shoots, it shifted something inside me. I stopped looking at my life as something that ended that night and started thinking about what came next. I went home and opened my journal. I wrote about what I saw, about what I felt. I wrote something that changed everything. I wrote that I was ready to keep going. I read those words again, the ones I had written months before, barely believing them. But this time, I wasn't just writing them. I meant them. The next few weeks were different. Not easier, but different. I let myself remember them, but not just in sadness. I let myself smile at the good memories. I let myself feel the love, not just the loss. And little by little, I started rebuilding. I went back to the support group. I spoke more. I shared my story. I let people in, and one day I met a woman who had lost her husband in a car accident. She was drowning just like I had been. And for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was helping someone else survive too.
That's incredible.
It was the moment I knew my story wasn't over. It was just beginning again. That day changed something in me. It was the first time in over a year that I had wanted to keep going. But wanting it and knowing how to do it were two different things. If the grief didn't disappear, it still clung to me, still weighed me down. But I stopped letting it be the only thing in my life. I started looking for ways to move through it instead of drowning in it. For months, I had been stuck in survival mode, waking up, existing, and then going back to sleep, if I could sleep at all. I didn't know how to move forward, only that I couldn't keep standing still. I wasn't ready to go back to work. I wasn't ready to pretend to be normal. But I was ready to do something, so I started volunteering at a local shelter for families who had lost their homes to fires.
You went back into the fire in a way.
Exactly, and it terrified me. I walked into that shelter on a cold February morning, not knowing what to expect. I wasn't sure if I could handle it, if being around people who had lost everything would break me all over again. But I told them my story, and they let me stay. At first, I just helped organize supplies, sorted through donated clothes. It wasn't much, but it was something. And for the first time since the fire, I felt like I had a purpose again, even if it was small. And then one day, they asked me to talk to a family who had just lost their home. A mother and her 2 sons. The woman was in shock, silent, withdrawn. I saw myself in her.
What did you say to her?
I sat down next to her. I didn't know if I should speak, but eventually I said, I know how this feels, and I know you don't believe me right now, but I promise, it won't always feel like this.
Did she believe you?
No, not at first. Just like I wouldn't have believed it if someone had told me that a year before. But she listened, and when she finally spoke, she didn't talk about what she lost. She asked, how do you keep breathing when it feels like there's no air left? And I told her the truth. I didn't have the answer, but I knew that she would find one, because if I could survive it, then so could she. And that was the moment I knew helping people through their loss was what I was meant to do,
Did it help you heal?
more than I ever thought possible. It didn't happen overnight. Healing is slow, messy, non-linear. Some days I felt okay. Other days, the grief hit me out of nowhere. Seeing a father holding his daughter's hand, hearing a laugh that sounded too much like my husband's. The pain was still there, but it wasn't consuming me anymore. It was becoming something else. 5 years later, I run my own nonprofit. We help families rebuild after losing everything. We provide housing, counseling, financial support, whatever they need. I've spent years trying to turn my pain into something meaningful, trying to take everything I lost and, turn it into hope for someone else.
Sarah, you didn't just survive, you rose.
And I want anyone listening to know, if you're in the dark right now, if you feel like there's nothing left, just hold on. The pain will never go away completely, but it will become something else, something you can carry without it crushing you. I know what it's like to wake up and not want to move. I know what it's like to feel like the world ended, but somehow you're still in it. And I know how impossible it seems to think that life could ever feel okay again, but it can, and it will. It won't be the same life. It won't ever be what it was before, but that doesn't mean it can't be something beautiful again.
You're proof of that.
I am, and if my story can help even one person keep going, then maybe, just maybe, all of this wasn't for nothing.
Sarah, your story is proof that even in the aftermath of unimaginable loss, life continues. It transforms, it grows, and it finds new purpose. And sometimes, in the ashes, we discover who we were meant to be.
Exactly, because if I could rise from it, so can anyone listening.
Sarah, I don't even know what to say. Some stories, they don't just make you listen, they make you feel. They make you ache for the person telling them. And Sarah, your story, it's one of survival, of resilience, of rising when the world tried to bury you in ashes. To anyone listening, if you're in that darkness right now, if you feel like you have nothing left, just hold on. Because even in the wreckage, even in the silence after the fire, there is still something left to build from. If this story moved you, let's talk. The comments are open. Have you ever felt trapped in the ashes? What helped you keep going? What gave you the strength to rise? And if you think this story was powerful, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs to be reminded that even after the fire, life doesn't end. It transforms. And if you thought this story was powerful, just wait until next time, because sometimes the stories we're most afraid to tell are the ones we need to hear the most.